And we're back on Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Today, we are talking with Dawn Forsyth from Health on Main, and we're talking about nutrition, because that's what Health on Main is all about. And we've been talking a little bit about digestion and absorption. You know, if it's one thing to say, oh, I'm taking however many millions of grams of iron, but if you're not absorbing the iron into your system, it's going in one end and out the other. Iron's one of those things that you can see when it's doing that. So it's a kind of interesting thing. It can also be toxic if you're having it in high doses. So, you know, it's quite a conundrum, because people think, especially in the world of supplements, that they're having what they should have, but if they're not absorbing it, it literally goes in one end and out the other. So in a day and age when we have so much of our society living in a constant state of stress, and of course to the body, stress is fight or flight. It's the amygdala in the brain becoming involved. It's, you know, that people don't digest when you're in the flight mode. Every ounce of your body's energy is going into escaping large animal who is about to eat me. And this is a really bad place for us to live on a regular basis. It's a great place to live when you're running away from a very large animal who's about to eat you, whether that be a human being, another human being, or something else. But when we live in that state all the time, fight, 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 run, 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 do this, do that, you got to do this or the world's going to come to an end. When you're living on that edge, your body is not sending what it needs to your digestive system. It's not producing the same enzymes in your stomach that are supposed to be breaking down the food. And you can very easily be in a situation where you think you're eating everything you need and have the best diet in the world, no fast food, no junk food, everything is great. But if you're not absorbing even the best food in the world, it's still not doing you any good.
Right. And I think that there's a lot of support out there now in terms of digestive enzymes. At Health on Main, we've got a really wide selection of different digestive enzymes to help to break down your food properly and to help you to absorb the nutrients from your food. So I think if anyone is struggling and really feels gassy, bloated, you know, just kind of nauseous after they've eaten, experiencing a lot of flatulence, or just, you know, just irritable bowel.
Or that stomach that makes
the
more
gurgling,
than
the
your mouth
gurgling
does.
sounds.
I mean, I remember Jason back in the day on the microphone there. He had the mic on one morning, and his stomach was making more noise than he was. We could
was hungry.
hear it rumbling through the airwaves. It was hilarious. What is that noise? It's Jason.
He was hungry. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. When your stomach's not feeling completely good, it's trying to tell you something.
Right. And I mean, there's some sort of very straightforward, very easy steps that we can follow to help with our digestion as well. Many people eat when they're stressed. And they're eating because they are just trying to get the food in, because they're on their way to a hockey game or taking their kids to hockey practice, or they're just grabbing something very quickly. And the problem with that is that they're eating on the run, or they're eating when their bodies, as you just said, are in that fight or flight mode. So it's sort of, and as they're in that state, again, very difficult to digest. So I always suggest that if you're really stressed out and, that's probably not the best time to eat. You want to make sure that you're sitting quietly somewhere where you can just take a couple of minutes and just really calm down. And that is why, we always grew up saying grace. We say grace at the table. And people sometimes don't do that anymore because it's not the in thing. But a big reason for saying grace other than giving thanks to the Lord for your food is also to allow your body to just calm down. To have your systems just calm down so that you can absorb the food that you're eating. And sometimes, we're eating and we get up right away and we sort of on to the next thing. And the body just needs a few minutes. Just like with the Asian culture, we like to sit down and kind of just relax and chat with each other at the end of a meal rather than just kind of getting up and getting to the next thing. And that really helps with absorption. So the other thing I find that helps is not drinking water while you're eating.
Yes, that's a big one. And
right?
Or gobs of orange juice.
Yeah.
I remember when I was little, the size of an orange juice portion was a little tiny juice glass that was about maybe 5 inches tall.
Right.
And it wasn't filled to the top.
Yeah.
So you only got a couple of mouthfuls of orange juice. People were never meant to drink 8 to 12 ounces of orange juice in a sitting. You don't need that much sugar. It's just not good for you. And then you're flushing out all the stuff you just ate in one end and out the other again.
Yeah.
And that's, again, not a very good thing to be doing.
So anyone struggling with digestive issues, I always suggest that try to avoid drinking water while you have food in your mouth. So you may want to just, for example, either drink about half an hour before you sit down to eat. And if you must take a sip of water, then make sure that your mouth is completely emptied and you've swallowed your food before you take a sip. And that really helps. Another thing that I like to suggest for people is to look at how, we're used to having carbs and proteins and fats and everything sort of mixed on our plates. And sometimes that combination is very difficult to break down. So separating your carbs from your proteins really helps with digestion. So sometimes I'll suggest having your protein or carbs first and waiting about half an hour and then having your protein, especially if you're really struggling. And it makes such a big difference when you separate those foods.
And it's there's a lot of people who are very conscious of the order in which they eat. My grandmother grew up in Jamaica, and she always said fruit first. And Weight Watchers brought fruit as a dessert into our culture in the 1950s. And it's a bizarre thing to think of because, as you know, as a nutritionist, fruit digests in 20 minutes. Start to finish, gone, done. If you have protein that takes 6 hours sometimes to digest, depending on what kind of proteins you had, like a red meat sort of thing is a good 6 hours. You put that fruit after on top of that, and it actually begins to ferment in your stomach because it was never meant to sit there for 6 hours. So people who have fresh fruit for dessert and think that they're doing a fat-free, nice dessert, they'd be better off to have that fruit cooked. My grandmother always said that you have your fruit cooked after a meal. And in Jamaica, she would make the banana boat, and you go outside and you put the banana, you split it in half inside the skin. Right. And you put things in it like a little bit of chocolate, a little bit of this and that. And then you roast it. And then the banana is what it should be for dinner. She would never let us eat raw fruit after 2:00 in the afternoon. Never any raw nuts late in the day either. It was all based on digestion, and science now backs this stuff up. But this is almost like taking the human body and going back in time to what worked in our grandmother's day, not in our parents' day, because the 1960s, 70s, 80s was a little bit odd in the food industry, more based on marketing than on real facts. And even the statistic that people keep going back to over and over and over again, even though it was retracted and spoken many times to be untrue, is the 8 ounces of water a day. It was taken out of context. It was taken completely out of context from a report that said 8 ounces of fluid over the course of a day. You're not supposed to sit there always with water and always be drinking, and sometimes that can actually be really bad for you. But when you think of the fact that a bowl of soup has liquid in it, a celery is full of water, it's a succulent. All of these things contribute to your intake of fluids during a day.
Right.
And it was a misquote by the media because the media needs one line and they want to run with one line. Right. Everything is fast in the media.
Right. I do find, though, for my clients, water is important in that many people are dehydrated.
Yes.
And when I speak to them, and especially when I understand their diet. So if you're drinking a lot of coffee, if you're having a lot of black teas, you're going to dehydrate yourself if you don't drink enough water to replenish
what
hydration.
What are the things in the tea and the coffee that are taking the water away from the system?
Because, first of all, caffeine is a stimulant, so it's a diuretic. So it's flushing every time when you drink, you're flushing your minerals right out right? When you pee, you're just flushing it all out. And if you don't put back in that water and you don't stay hydrated, then you're going to end up with headaches. You're going to end up with aches and pains over time because it does impact your body. And because the body is mostly made up of water, it's important that we are hydrated. I mean, many people will complain about headaches. And one of the first things I'll ask is that, how much water did you drink today? Because if you are dehydrated, you can get a headache. And that's the body's way of saying to you, you need to drink fluid. You need to drink water. So I think there is value in being hydrated. I think there's value in making sure that you drink sufficient water and understanding that when you're taking things like, you know, some people have 3, 4, 5 cups of coffee a day, and that's
caffeine.
And that's something that's part of their lifestyle. And don't realize the impact of having that much coffee.
Alcohol does the same thing.
That's right. So there are many things that will do that. So it's just important to stay hydrated and to make sure that you are drinking good, clean, filtered water.
It's also interesting that all the things that we talk about come back to balance, don't they? It's all about balance. A balanced diet with not too much of everything. A balance seems to be the key to nutrition today. You're listening to Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. We're talking with Dawn Forsyth from Health on Main today. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion about health and nutrition. Stay tuned.
Do you find that mainstream FM radio plays the same classic rock songs over and over, and rarely, with the exception of specialty programs, play backtracks or B-sides from your favorite albums? I hope you can join me, Chuck Roberts, on Friday nights at 9 p.m. for my 1-hour show, Classic Backtracks. We'll explore the backtracks or B-sides from classic rock artists from the 60s through the 90s and play the songs that you don't usually hear on mainstream radio. And hopefully we'll play a hidden gem that brings back some fond musical memories. During my show, I also profile a Canadian rock artist in my Coast to Coast segment, and each week close the program profiling a classic rock artist's contribution to rock music, from bands to solo efforts or collaborations. That's Classic Backtracks on Friday nights at 9 p.m.
Hi folks, Kim Mitchell here. However you choose to get around, your ATV, your snowmobile, your boat, car, if you have a motorcycle, all these things take 100% of your attention and skill to operate safely. Alcohol impairs that, and bad things can happen. So, be smart, okay? You know what I'm going to say next.
This message brought to you from the Safe and Sober Awareness Committee.
We are back on Fresh Waves. We're talking this morning with Dawn Forsyth of Health on Main. And this broadcast can be heard again on Sunday afternoons or Sunday mornings between 10 and noon. And it is on our podcasts at freshwaves.ca. And Jason is going to give us all that information at the top of the hour. Dawn, to continue on our discussion, we just mentioned the fact that everything needs a balance. And when you were talking about grace, I think that's one of the things that society now, although you will see on Instagram and Facebook and social media someone's picture of their dinner. I don't know why kids today take pictures of what they're eating. But in one sense, it's almost a good thing because we've gone back to appreciating our food. We appreciate the presentation because first you eat with your eyes. And when you have healthy, great food, you are appreciating that with your eyes, then you smell it, then your mouth starts to salivate. And when your mouth starts to salivate, that's all those good nutrients and acids coming in because you digest a lot of your food in your mouth before you even swallow.
Yeah, a lot of your carbohydrates start being digested with your salivary glands in your mouth. Yeah.
Right. So this whole process is there for a reason. And if you just see food, quaff it, and go on your way, you're not getting any of that. I heard a holistic nutritionist once say, I would rather you have a hot dog with an enemy, a hot dog with a friend, than a salad with an enemy.
That's right.
Because you want to be relaxed. You want to be enjoying it. So many cultures in this world, the Italian culture, where the noon meal will take 2 hours because they're talking and they're enjoying and appreciating all the food that goes into their bodies. It's almost like taking a look at a 3-year-old when they discover something yummy for the first time. We all need to have that enthusiasm as we eat. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
And Grace used to do that for us because people would say, bless this food. And if you're not into the religion thing, which a lot of people aren't these days, just to simply be grateful for your food and say, I am so grateful for the meal that I'm about to eat, for the beautiful food and how it was grown, for the sun and the rain and the trees and the sky and everything and the water that went into making this beautiful thing that I'm about to eat. And having that appreciation for your food is really wonderful.
I think so. And I think being grateful for all that we have is so important. I think we are blessed as a country, as a nation. And I think that oftentimes, when we get caught up with the negativity coming out of different countries and just what's going on around the world, we sometimes forget how blessed we are as a country. And
we can live in that negative stress, and then we're not absorbing our food
that's
properly.
Right. That's right.
The people who watch the evening news while they eat.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always tell my clients, don't watch the news while you're eating, because all of that negative energy that's coming through that newscast is going into you. And as you're eating, you're seeing that, someone's being shot, someone's being killed, there's a bomb going. Like, there's so many things that you're looking at, and your body is seeing that, and you're eating and you're trying to eat, right?
And your brain reacts to those things, whether you like it or not.
Because, it's almost like you're there even though you're not there, right? So again, very difficult to digest your food when you're seeing all of that and having that experience. So, and I think too, even with sleep, I mean, a lot of times people are having difficulty sleeping today, and they're really struggling with sleep. And again, because there's just so much going on, and people can't seem to, calm down to get to bed. I have a lot of my clients tell me, well, I can fall asleep, but I can't stay asleep. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, they wake up, and sometimes it's 2, and then 4 o'clock they're up. And that's really just, they're stressed.
Well,
and
it's interesting that you said that, because we
yeah.
had a listener who contacted me yesterday on Facebook and asked, can you ask Dawn what I can eat before bed? My response was, don't eat before bed. But anyway, what we can eat before bed so that we can sleep better.
Yeah, so normally, I would prefer that people didn't eat right before bed, but if there is a need to eat, I would encourage maybe a tea. So having something like a chamomile tea, a lavender tea, something that's very calming and soothing.
An Algonquin peace tea, which does have chamomile in it, but it has other things too that helps you to sleep.
So it tends to calm you down, and maybe having a nice shower, warm bath. Those are the things that I would encourage people to do, because you really want to give your liver a chance to just digest and detoxify during sleep properly. And if you are sort of eating right before bedtime, then the liver really has to work extra hard to digest that food, because you're not moving around when you're lying down.
Well, you hope not.
Right?
That may be one of the reasons you're not sleeping.
You're very sedentary. So what happens is again, the liver has to work hard now to help you digest, and instead of detoxifying and going through its normal functions at night. So I think it's really important to really revisit the way that we look at sleep and what we do at the end of our night. I
think it's really interesting, because in the Italian culture, when they eat very late at night, they don't even get to the restaurant till 9. Then they're all going to sleep, and they're all waking up in the morning. It's not like they have this national sleep crisis, but they eat things after their meal, digestivos, things that help them to digest their food, so that they can go to sleep, and they all walk home. They don't get in their car and drive. They walk, and they stroll for half an hour before they get home. There's a process of unwinding and things like that. So it's interesting, because when you're talking about a culture now where the worst night of sleep I can ever have is going out and eating late at night. I can't do it anymore. And I talked to a bunch of women on the weekend, and that's where sparked that that conversation. They found the same thing. They're not some of them can't have a glass of wine with dinner, even if dinner's at 6 o'clock, because it affects their sleep. Some can't eat late anymore, and a lot of business dinners are late. So the lady that did ask the question, she said, life gets in the way of what is ideal.
Right.
So the don't eat after 6 o'clock is a lovely thing to say, but it often isn't going to be the way.
And that's
so
where
then what do you
digestive
eat?
enzymes come into play as well. So the digestive enzymes can really support your digestion when you need to eat late, or when it's just not feasible for you to eat, before 6.
Would it be possible then, would you have the digestive enzyme when you get home before you go to bed, or do you have it while you're eating your dinner?
You would normally have it just before you eat, or during your meal, or maybe right after. So around that meeting or eating window. So whether 15 minutes before, just before you eat, or during your meal, it tends to be very beneficial to support you breaking down your food.
Okay, and then that would help you to sleep a little better.
Well, yeah, because the food's not sitting there in your stomach, just, kind of waiting.
Yeah. Would it be safe to say that a heavy protein meal then at a late time of the night is probably not a grand idea? I
think it's more the carbs, to be honest.
Really?
I think carbohydrates are our worst enemy right now, and I think that we're just eating too many carbs, and as you know, everything breaks down into sugar.
Except the carbs tend to make you sleepy, don't they? Like if you have a big pasta dinner, don't you get like the afternoon sleepies? If I have lasagna in the middle of the day, I want to be snoozing by 2.
Well, it depends, because it depends on your insulin spikes and how cortisol is behaving in your body. But for many of us, when we eat a heavy carb meal, it can make you sluggish. Yes, it can kind of make you kind of feel a little bit like,
like
I don't want to do any. Right. And of course, in certain situations, if you're an athlete, for example, you need carbs to give you that energy to kind of move forward. So, but what we're finding is that there are a lot of us who are just taking in way too much sugar in our diet. Yeah. And sugar is coming from all aspects of the diet. So sometimes we think, well, it's just, okay, I'm not going to have donuts and or whatever, cakes and pastries, and that's sugar. Well, no, because protein in excess, protein breaks down into sugar, right?
Everything white breaks down into sugar. White rice, white bread, white
eventually,
pasta.
Right? So really, the body just needs 1 teaspoon of sugar a day. Right. And unfortunately, we get much, much more than that in our diets today. So it's really making it hard for the liver to be able to detox that and to get rid of it. And that's why a lot of people are ending up with fatty liver and just different issues now that we didn't see before, because really our foods were being grown much differently than they are today as well, right?
And our eating was different. I mean, if you look back at the pioneer days, like we said earlier, the great-grandmother thing, if you look at our grandmothers and great-grandmothers, they didn't really have an overload of gluten.
No, because the food was being grown differently.
Chicken and vegetables, or some kind of a meat source, which was tiny. It fit in the palm of your hand. It was that 4 ounces of meat and a ton of vegetables, because the vegetables are what you grew. So that's what you were eating. There was a novelist who, he's a nutritionist and scientist. He went all over the world. He was going to create the best nutrition book, the ultimate nutrition book of all time. And after 4 years of research all around the world, and he's already got a master's degree under his belt, he decided that his book was going to be very short. If you don't find it in your grandmother's cupboard, don't eat it. He said, there's the book. Yeah. Finish, start, and the end.
And I think vegetables are really important too. I mean, there are lots of different diets out there right now, and I know that I do like the keto diet. For many clients, it works really well because it really lowers the amount of carbohydrates in the diet. And we're seeing so many studies where eating more of a ketogenic diet is supportive of brain health. And even in cancer situations, we're seeing that having more of a keto diet, again, lessening the amount of sugar that we're taking in, tends to be more beneficial for the individual. Now, with that said, there is quite a bit of vegetables that are a part of the keto diet. So I think sometimes people think keto means eating more protein, but it really means eating more vegetables. So you really need to take in at least 7 to 10 cups of vegetables a day, and vegetables are so important for supporting our health in terms of keeping that acid alkaline balance, helping to increase our oxygen uptake in the blood, and so it's so important to make sure that we are incorporating good quality food as well. And I always recommend organic when possible, but also our locally grown. We have a lot of farms in our area, local farms, and they grow great produce in the summertime, and I think we need to support them, and we need to go out and buy local produce. And if we can't get organic, and I think that that's something that we really need to start looking at. A lot of our foods are coming from Chile in the US and different parts of the world, and we need to support our own local farmers who are making good food. They're growing great food. So I think that's something that we need to also be mindful of.
Right. Now, do you have a seminar coming up tonight?
And
if you're listening on Sunday, she does not have a seminar on Sunday night. This is a seminar on Wednesday, and that's January 23rd.
That's correct. So tonight at 7:30 to 8:30, I am going to be speaking about the natural ways to support chronic inflammation in the body. So we know a lot of people are suffering with arthritis or different itises, and even gout and different things like that. And really, because there's no prescription medication that really targets chronic inflammation, we really need to look at our nutrition and our foods and the types of foods that we're choosing and the different meals that we're preparing for ourselves and all of those things. So we'll be talking about natural ways to support chronic inflammation in the body tonight. It's going to be a lot of great information. So if you're able to come out, come on out.
What's your address so people can
So we are at 5892 Main Street, and if you're familiar with the Giant Tiger Plaza, we're in the Giant Tiger Plaza, just sort of where the
Beside the
Baskin
flower
Robbins,
store.
that's right, we're sort of nestled in between the flower store at a Tipperary pub as well. Baskin Robbins is in that plaza as well, and a Pet Global as well. So we're there. So you can find us there.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We've really loved having you on the air. We could do this for another 3 hours, so we'll definitely have you back again soon to talk about some more health issues. You're listening to Fresh Waves on Whistle FM.